Hello and welcome to this week's episode of History Behind the Page, the live series where you get to know more about the people behind your favorite history pages, content creators, and all things history. I am excited for today's guest. We have the man behind WW2TV, Mr. Paul Woodadge, on. Super excited for that. He is so knowledgeable. He is, one of the greatest, one of the OGs of history TV. So I'm excited to have him on and get you guys to ask some questions. So on that note, this is a live Q&A, so you are more than welcome to ask questions. I do ask that on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is a question mark bubble. Please submit your questions there, as sometimes they get lost in the comments, and we want to get to as many questions as we can within the allotted time. So this is going to be super fun. So let's get Paul on here and we'll get this Saturday rolling. So give me 1 second. Hey, Paul.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I've got a bit of a sniffle, got a bit of a cold, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I hope your cold goes by pretty speedy. So, but thanks for
Yeah.
doing this, even not feeling so well. So I appreciate that.
No, happy to be here.
Yeah, so hope you had a lovely Saturday so far. It's evening for you, morning over here. So,
It's been good. My football team that I support, they drew 2-2, so it's not bad. So it's
yeah,
Saturday afternoon is always better with a win, but draw's
of
okay. So
course,
I'm good. I'm
yeah,
good.
perfect. Well, let's get this trainer rolling. Because we just want to know more about who you are and how you got into World War II TV and history. So why don't you tell us about how did you get into history? Has it always been a part of your life? Kind of tell us the backstory of that.
Well, it's very simple. I'm just of the age where World War II was just everything growing up. There's a whole plethora of historians in Britain who are my age within about 3 or 4 years. Alex Kershaw, James Holland, Al Murray. We all grew up watching war movies on a Saturday afternoon, playing with war toys, Spitfires, model soldiers, reading wartime comics, and it was just everything that was my childhood. So when people ask me, I start being interested, I honestly don't remember not being interested. It was from 5 years old. I visited my mum and dad earlier this year, and my mum gave me some drawings I'd done when I was 5, and one was of a Spitfire, one was of paratroopers on D-Day. So that's kind of where it starts.
That is kind of where it starts. And then so you've always been in history, did you pursue it in like a college level, or just kind of, how did that all become? Because this leads up to World War II TV in a way. Oh,
Your sound is breaking up at my.
Oh,
Yeah, my.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. So you were into it as a young boy, and it pursued all the way
Yep.
up into adulthood. Did you go to school for it? How did you get more involved in history to start your path to where you are today?
Well, I did it the absolute wrong way to do it. I mean, for people who are watching this who went to university and did it all the proper way, I didn't do that. I left school at 16, and everything I've ended up doing has been kind of a random path. I worked as a volunteer in museums and did bits and pieces. I was an extra in a few movies over the years. And then I moved to France 21 years ago, and I had been bringing tours across as an unofficial time before that. And then I became a tour guide in Normandy, and I set up a company, and I started taking tours, and then I started getting in contact with historians who started asking me things about Normandy, and suddenly, well, not suddenly, but 20 years later, I'm a go-to guy for people who want to have more information about the Battle of Normandy. So historians contact me, authors contact me. So it's been a long, convoluted path, but I didn't really do it the correct way. But you should really do it. But yeah, it's nice to be kind of recognized as being not. I don't like saying a top expert, but I know a little bit about what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. So what made you want to start doing tours for people? Yep, are you there?
I didn't catch that one there. I think it's
Oh,
sorry. It's either I'm
it's
buffering or you're buffering.
what made you want to start doing tours for people, taking people on tours?
Hello.
Oh, are you there?
I can't hear anything. This is a pain.
Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Sorry.
Sorry.
What
Yeah.
made
No. It's. I don't know
it's
why my
okay.
internet connection is normally perfect, but today it's really bad. I don't know why.
I'm so sorry. What did I just ask? Oh, what made you want to start doing tours for people? What made you want to start doing that?
I just wanted to start doing something that I enjoyed, really. I mean, I first came to Normandy, I was 15 or 14 or something. My great uncle landed on Sword Beach as an officer with the Royal Ulster Rifles, a Northern Irish unit. And it was a place that got under my skin then. I loved it with other people. And given how enormous the Normandy tour guide industry is today, I think there's about 150 tour guides in Normandy. When I
Oh,
started,
wow.
there were only 4 or 5 who were actually doing just battlefield tours. The others sort of did medieval things and Mont Saint Michel and other things. So I wanted to be more specialized about just the battles and specifically not just D-Day, but the days after the Battle of Normandy, the 77 days that
Hmm.
elapsed after that first day. So I wanted to do that, and I was doing that very happily for years until 2020, and then COVID hit, and suddenly
Hmm.
there's no work to do, which is why I then morphed into the next phase, which is the old YouTubing.
So World War II TV, everybody loves it. Everyone admires it. What made you start doing, like, I know you said COVID, but like, how did you start planning the ways of it in your first episode? And
Again, I that broke up again. I'm so sorry
oh,
about this.
that's
I don't know
sorry.
why my connection is so.
I'm so sorry too. I don't think it's full
Maybe
Wi-Fi.
I maybe we'll move. I'll try and move in the house. Maybe that'll work. It's.
That's
I don't know why. Let me try and go somewhere else.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine. I'll go in. I'll go in the actual streaming office. I'm here now, but my green screen will look weird behind me now. But anyway, is that better?
I know oh yeah, we can hear you perfectly. So
Good.
um
Okay.
so
Well, I'll,
World War II TV, you started it during COVID because obviously you couldn't be doing tours anymore. Nobody was traveling. So how did you plan and start it? What was the whole process of that like?
well, there was no planning really. I mean, people say to
Hmm.
me now, "Oh, it's you had a really good idea, the way it built over doing this, this, and this." And there was no plan. It was a random thing that I started because I had nothing else to do. And
Hmm.
the big one I did first was the D-Days live stream. So I sat here at my computer for 17 hours on June the 6th in 2020. You're just using Zoom. I had a crappy video camera at the time, well, webcam at the time. And I called in a few friends. James Holland called in, Peter Caddick Adams, various other historians I knew kind of called in during the day. And then I kind of felt I enjoyed it, and other historians started saying, "Oh, this sounds quite cool. I can come on," and it's evolved on its own with a little bit of guidance from me. But I didn't have any, I didn't have a plan for it. It was just something to fill in the time, to keep myself busy, and then it now looks like there was some plan with it, but there really wasn't. It was an accidental route to wherever I am now. I don't know. And you've had some amazing YouTubers on JD and Chris and people like that who
Hmm.
have way more subscribers than me. But I enjoy what I do, and it sometimes it seems like there was method in it, but it really was just an unplanned.
Oh, Paul, I think you're breaking up. Uh-oh. Okay, so we're having a little bit of connection issues. So let's see if we can get Paul back on here in just a second. So um, let's see. Give me 1 second. The internet, you can't live with it, can't live without it, right? Let's see. Oops. All right, we'll see if. Oh.
Hello again. I have no idea why everything's going wrong today. I've done 579 live streams on my YouTube channel. Everything's normally perfect, and then so today, for some reason, there's real gremlins in the works. I don't know what it is.
I don't know either. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was the internet and technology. Can't live with it, can't live without it. It's sadly it makes the world turn, and it makes it what we, social media and everything, run. So
yeah. I'm back, and I heard all that, so that's good. So let's. I do apologize, and but anyway, yeah, I seems to be okay now, so good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So we were at the connection issue, and then we were talking about World War II TV. Okay, so let's talk about World War II TV a little bit more.
Yeah.
How has it changed where you are today compared to like just doing the tours? Has it improved a lot of stuff? Has it made doing tours again? Because are you doing tours again now that COVID is, back there?
Yeah, I do some. Yeah, I do some tours, but I only do the tours that I want to do, which means I don't do the really kind of basic, just shuffle around the very famous D-Day sites, because after been doing it for 20 years, it me a little bit now. So I do inland stuff. So the last tour I was out last week was a 2-day tour for a 4th Division son of a 4th Division veteran. So we traced his steps and went through the towns he fought at, and that still excites me. That kind of tour is really rewarding. But so now World War II TV enables me to do that as my main thing, guide a little bit to top up the income, frankly, and keep myself get outside and breathe some fresh air, and and keep on doing the two, really. But in terms of the first part of the question, how it's changed me, I mean, I was a Battle of Normandy guide with a little bit of knowledge of the other theatres of the war. Now I'm a Battle of Normandy guide with a hell of a lot more knowledge of the other theatres. And I like now on my tours to, if I'm talking about the second week of June in Normandy, I would throw in what was happening at that time on the Russian front, or what was happening in the Strategic Air War, something like that. So I can offer a more contextual understanding. That is one of the things that I'm really, really trying to do on my channel is get away from the nationalistic telling of World War II history. Because if I follow what you do here, and when you go into a bookstore in the USA, it's primarily books by American authors on American subjects written for an American audience. And in Britain, it's British authors writing about British battles for a British author, and so on and so forth around the world. And I find it a bit frustrating that people in the USA perhaps don't get as good access to Eastern Front books, or the people in Australia don't get access to British books, and so on and so forth. So with my channel, when I have a week discussing Australia and New Zealand, I bring on Australian and New Zealand historians, which the time difference is confusing sometimes for the viewers, but it's good, because then that brings someone on who's actually written about that from that country's focal point. And I've had guests from 28 different countries so far, which I'm really proud of. And there'll be a few more over the next few weeks. I'm going to add a South African, a Zambian, and I forget what the other third nation is coming up in the next few weeks. And that's really cool, because history, World War II was a global war, and to understand it, we need to understand how the different areas around that globe saw it, because the national lens of history is making us suffer for our understanding. I mean, an example would be Guadalcanal is the American battle, and the Australians is Kokoda over on New Guinea. Okay, so two islands, in the Japanese counted that as one campaign. So from the Japanese point of view, how they were fighting on Guadalcanal and how they were fighting in Papua New Guinea and Kokoda was the same campaign. But Australians tend to hear about Kokoda, and Americans tend to hear about Guadalcanal, and they don't necessarily connect those two into one big battle. So that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to globalize the focus and unnationalize it. Is that a phrase? It is. It is now.
That's a perfect way to explain it. And you are very right about that. You know, in the United States, like, we hear about everything that we did during World War II, and we hear a little bit about what, you know, Britain did and everything. But there's a lot of people who I speak with who think that it was just America and the United States and Britain who invaded the beaches of Normandy. And we're like, well, the Canadians were there, and there were also like a bunch, you know, there were other peoples too, linked to other stuff that were there too. So it wasn't just, you know, it's good to know, like, the whole war part, the whole world part of it, that it was a global war. It wasn't just, you know, these Americans and British, you know, running around all star spangled and doing it by themselves. You know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things we're dealing with. We're dealing with the fact that, and I'm not speaking negatively about education systems or other history resources, but if we keep spoon feeding each nation with each nation's heroics, we're not getting anywhere, you know. And I'm not blaming the US any more than I'm blaming Great Britain. The shop in Great Britain, you go in there and it's all books about dam busters, the Battle of Britain, and Burma, and British don't talk enough about the Pacific campaign. I mean, Sol David, who's a British historian, his book Devil's Dog just was launched in London, I think, 3 days ago. So he's writing about Marines in the Pacific, and not only is it cool that he's tackling that subject, because he's British, he's bringing a different perspective, because he's seeing it through the lens of a Brit, going, okay, how does this compare to Burma? How does this compare to the other campaigns around the world? So the Sol is a great historian, but it's offering something a little bit different. And the same thing would apply. I've got 2 weeks on El Alamein, the 80th anniversary of El Alamein, coming up in October. And one of the historians coming on is an American, John Parshall, who co-wrote Shattered Sword about Midway, one of my favorite books of all time. And he's talking about El Alamein from an American historian's point of view. So he's going to kind of dive into the view of it without the biases of being a Brit, where you must like this general and dislike this general. And as I say, I grew up with the idea of all these comics I read as a kid about the Desert War, which have affected my understanding of that campaign. So someone from America writing about El Alamein theoretically would have a fresh approach to it, just as Sol David writing about the island hopping campaign offers a fresh perspective. So that's one of my mantras, is bringing different viewpoints of the same event, so we get a better understanding.
I think that's awesome. So that brings me to the next question. How do you decide on what you're going to be doing for World War II TV, and who you're going to be bringing on, and what campaign, battle, or anything specific that you're going to be speaking on? How do you decide that?
Well, I do it all myself, which is great. So I mean, Max sometimes gives a little bit of advice, but I'm a one-man dictatorship. It's a benign dictatorship, World War II TV. I don't have to put anything to committee. So if I think, oh, I'll do a week on this, I'll do a week on that, and I'm not driven by views. So if 1 week I know is a little bit more of a niche subject, it doesn't matter to me, because I think it should be covered. That although if I do a niche subject 1 week, I try and do like a kind of a home run popular week the following it. So you know, Romania at War Week didn't do very well back in, I think that was April, but I followed it up with a Battle of the Bulge or something. So what happened, how it works now is it's a combination of me reaching out to authors that I know. It's also them contacting me. Publishers contact me saying, this author has got this book coming out, he'd like to come, she'd like to come on and talk about this. And I try and also tie in with anniversaries. So I didn't do that much last year because, as I said earlier, it was an evolving concept. But this year, with it being the 80th of 1942, I've tried to bring in some anniversary shows on the day or in the week 80 years on they occurred. So yeah, I mean, I've got my Word document I keep on my desktop with my list of potential guests and list of potential subjects. It's getting a bit unreadable. It's getting ridiculously long. And I now pretty much know what I'm doing till February next year now,
Oh,
which
wow.
is when I started. I knew I would plan for Thursday on the Tuesday. That's kind of how it was. I was working like 4 days ahead. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
several months ahead, but it's great. And so I will try and say follow up something about if I do a week about the Pacific, I will try and follow up with a week about the ETO or the Eastern Front. So I try and vary it up. And then also, as you probably know, I'm really keen on a lot of, as many as I can get, female historian representation, because
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you've always covered. And again, the people from the different nations. So that will steer me as well. So it's like,
That's
okay, who I will try and find a big hitter, a big name to kind of
mm-hmm.
headline the festival, so to speak, and then a couple of support acts who are perhaps PhD graduates or
Mm-hmm.
people that are bottom rung, and then someone who's a bit more niche and unknown who deserves a wider audience, and then that kind of puts the week together. So the theme week idea, I think I started that like about a year ago. So I was already a year in when I started to say, okay, let's group this into theme weeks. And now I say in October, El Alamein will be a 2 week theme week. So it's a theme
Mm-hmm.
fortnight in English, and Stalingrad in January will be a 2 week uh,
Mm-hmm.
week theme week. So a double for your money. So yeah, it's a lot of planning and lots of emails and lots of negotiation, because you have to juggle with their dates, my availability, their availability, book launches, tying in with anniversaries. Then people get sick, they get work to do, they have
Mm-hmm.
things that come up. So, with live streaming, I think in the last month or so, 3 or 4 of them had to be cancelled. I cancelled one when the Queen passed away. I thought I'm not going to do one that night because that just seems a bit inappropriate. And then I had
Mm-hmm.
one scheduled for Monday, which I've now postponed till Tuesday because it's the Queen's funeral. So I thought, my guest
Mm-hmm.
said I don't want to be doing a show that day because I don't.
Yeah.
So there's always constant revisions and changes, but that's okay. It's just me. It's just fun, and people, my audience are very forgiving if I cancel or delay a show or
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So it's a little bit more organized than it used to be, but it's still a little bit kind of random.
Yeah. So when you're putting all these shows together and getting people on and talking about the certain things that you're going to be talking about, is there, with how long you've been doing this, is there still times that you're learning about something that you didn't know much about,
Yeah.
or something that has popped up and was like, and you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that happened, or
Yeah.
anything? Is that still something that frequently happens?
Yeah. Pretty much every week, and um, the shows I enjoy all the shows. But the
Mm-hmm.
two types of shows I enjoy the most are the ones where I know a lot about the subject already. So if it's a Normandy subject, I can join in with the guest and kind of spitball about theory. So we did one about the Falaise Gap a few weeks ago, and I was almost like an extra historian, because I always maintain that I am just the host. Although I know stuff, I don't try
Mm-hmm.
and outshine the guest. The guest is the big expert, and I'm just there to help the guest get that across and put questions that I think of that would be the questions that the audience would like to answer the guest. And then we have the live questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the ones I know a lot are good, and the ones where I know nothing are great, because I just sit back and listen, and I don't jump in with things. The ones that are a little bit more tricky are the ones where I think I know, but then I find out doing it that I don't know because I haven't read enough. And you must
Mm-hmm.
kind of be aware. You think, oh, I know a bit about the Battle of Midway. Then you bring on a real expert and you go, no, I didn't know much about
Nope.
the Battle
Yep.
of Midway.
Mm-hmm.
So the middle ones are the most tricky, because often I find out that what I knew is a myth, or it's people go,
Mm-hmm.
no, and I like it when my guests, I'll put a question. So I'll say, is it true that this, and they'll go, no, that's not really true, Paul. I go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm glad you've corrected me. That's fine. So those, but the ones where I learn completely,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm sitting there just going to open mouth, just going, because it's just, I'm just I'm absorbing it as much as the audience is absorbing it. And that's,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask this, but one of the things that has happened is that some of the historians have really got to the point where they're looking forward to coming on with me, because they're not doing a kind of a radio spot with someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. There's a very famous historian, I'm not going to quote him, but he was doing a radio show, and the guest said, and now we're going to have, who's just written a book about World War XI. So he said, I died a little bit inside, thinking I've now got to have a conversation with someone who believes that there were 10 World War Wars, and he's writing about the 11th. And
that was so funny.
It is funny. It's awful for the advert for the education of
exactly.
But that's the. I mean, I'm not saying that's something that happens to these authors all the time, but they do radio. They do little promotional things where they're just being asked by someone who's got a 3x5 index card. They've written a couple of notes on this battle is Stalingrad. Ask about, and they don't enjoy it. And so now with me, John McManus, for example, who's pretty much a household name in the US. Yeah. Well, he is a household name. We just come on and chat like mates now. We have a broad theme of what we're going to talk about, but we go off down the rabbit holes that we're famous for. And our Woody's going down a rabbit hole now, and we suddenly start talking about something that we hadn't planned to. But that's great, and they enjoy it. And invariably, when I end the stream, within a few minutes, I've got an email from the guest saying, "Oh, that was brilliant! I can't wait to come back on again next time." And that's you can't go wrong with that. That's kind of gold, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. This just came to mind. I just wanted to thank you for you did an episode, I think, back in November on the 4th Armored Division.
Yeah.
And yeah, my Oppo was in the 4th Armored Division. He was a staff sergeant, and so it just made me so happy. I think JD or somebody sent me the video, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I logged onto YouTube, and I sat on the couch and let dinner burn on the stove and whatever, just watching it. So thank you for doing that episode. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And it's great when I get the new subscribers find it, and I get that a lot. It's people, because YouTube is essentially a big search engine, isn't it? So people will log on and look up for the unit that their granddad, their father, their uncle, they're studying at school, wherever it be, and my subject, my show will come up, and then they watch that one, and some of them just stay with that one. They don't watch any more. They just watch that one, and then they go, okay, well, thanks for that, and off they go, and that's fine. But some will go, okay, I'll watch your other stuff now.
Yeah. And I think that's great too when people actually look that up, because like your channel, probably they learned something about one of their family members who was in World War II, and then that intrigues them. They learn more about what their family member did, and then they start to go down those infamous rabbit holes that we all know, like you said, well too much about. So I think it's great, what you're doing, what people like JD and Chris are doing, and it's just it's wonderful. So I know all of us history nerds definitely appreciate it. So thank
you. Yeah, and it's about reaching different types of audience in different ways, and Chris and JD are reaching a far wider, greater audience than I am, but they're doing a slightly different thing. And one of the things I'm very proud of is that I've become kind of the historians channel, in that I'll be doing a live stream with, for example, one Canadian professor of history, but the others are all watching it as well. And I so there's like all of Canada's best known historians are all watching or participating in the same stream at the same time. And that's really cool. When people say at the beginning, "Oh, you planned this very well." I mean, yes, I'll be honest, I wish I had a few more subscribers. I feel that the content I'm providing with the quality of the guest is deserving of a wider audience than it's getting. But as you know, with social media, a social media audience can be very fickle. They will jump from the one new thing to the next new thing, and there'll be a history chick, then there'll be a history chickette, there'll be a Mark III, and a Mark IV will come out. And if you're not on your game, suddenly I'm not picking on you, but you know what I mean? There's that.
No, I totally get it, yeah.
And so if I had built up a really big audience of the general public, that would have been great, but they could just ditch me immediately for the next World War II thing. So but the historians, that again, that's why I'm proud that the historians talk about me. And if I have one historian come on, they then say, oh, you should have this person on, and they will give me the name of someone else who's written a book or is studying something at a particular historical history department of a university. And that's the way I've gone. And I'm so I kind of think, well, that core respect amongst the history community is something you kind of can't pay for. And
I
maybe
completely agree.
views will come eventually, but JD and Chris and all those other guys, that they're plowing away. But like any of us who's using social media, it can all end overnight, or it can triple. That's the randomness of it. You can suddenly go crazy big, or you can just, because we go, yeah, no bore with that, and they move on. And so the solid foundation, in my case, of the historians, I think, is something that I will hopefully be able to look back on in 5 years and say that was a good foundation to build it on.
Absolutely. The quality of the content and everything behind it. I completely agree with you on that one. So what makes, besides, I know you talked about scheduling earlier and how that is difficult, dealing with time zones and like all that other stuff. Is there something specific when it goes into filming an episode that is just like your main struggle, like whether it's getting time to go film or anything like that?
Well, it's because I do everything live. There's always, like we experienced today, there's always that risk that someone's internet connection just goes, their microphone fails, their cat, rips their face in front, whatever it would be, that you can't predict. And live streaming. Well, I've just finished a week filming with another organization, and there have been loads of social media experts with this group this week who are giving me some advice and things. And they're saying live streaming is much harder to find an audience than uploads. And the reason I started doing live streaming, and this is a confession time, folks who are watching, is that I'm a bit lazy. I'm not lazy really, but editing stuff takes time. If I was to interview a person and then record it and then download it and then start editing it and putting in titles, I'd start editing out the bit where I go and the bit where they go and sadly I spent 4 or 5 hours doing that, getting it just right, adding in graphics, adding in fades, things like that, and transitions like JD does, and then I'd upload it. But when I do a live stream, providing the guest turns up, providing the internet connection's okay, providing the hurricane doesn't hit, at the end of that conversation, when I press end stream, that's it. The job is done. It stands and falls on how good or how bad it was. And sometimes I make horrendous blunders in a sentence will start, and I just halfway through the sentence don't know how to finish it. I go, and it just kind of goes nowhere. Or the guest I'll say something that makes me look stupid, or I'll give but at least it's done. And that's why I can do 5 or 6 hour-and-a-half-ish long shows a week, because there's no editing involved, and the editing is soul destroying. I mean, and you make shorts. And how long do you take to make the ones where you mime the voices of a clip? What's that? A few hours work?
No, if it takes me longer than 10 minutes, start to finish, I won't do it. I can't. It mentally messes with me.
Well, you must be amazingly fast there. But I mean, anything, anything, the editing stuff, it just takes ages. So the live thing is the risk of it actually working. But the benefit is the live interaction. That's the thing, is that I get the viewers and the subscribers who are maybe living in a part of the world where history festivals don't come their way, where they don't have World War II events happening on their doorstep and things like that. They can put a question to a historian that they read. They can ask a question live to John McManus or Prit Buttar or Jennifer Grant, whoever it would be. And that's fantastic. I mean, when I was reading history in my teens and 20s, the idea of being able to have any kind of contact with that author would be insane. You might be lucky enough to see television once a year or something, but there would be a one-way journey. You'd be watching a pre-recorded program that you had no interaction with. And so the idea of being able to, as a member of the audience, interact with that that historian, and then the conversation take a direction that I wasn't planning. That's the reward. That's the reward for it. So it doesn't benefit the YouTube algorithm going live, and talking for as long as we talk doesn't benefit the YouTube algorithm. It's 15 minutes, 20 minutes is the best way to get really, really massive views. And that's how shows are over 2 hours of just me and another bloke just sitting there waffling on about, a battle. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I enjoy doing it, and the historians enjoy being the guest. So yeah, there are some not problems, but issues with the live stream. You just say, is the person going to turn up? Is the internet going to fail? And I've had a few ones where it hasn't gone, and most people accept it. People get very snarky in the comments. Didn't you prepare this? Didn't you know it? You go, yeah, of course we prepared it. And then shit happens. So I've done maybe 5 or 6 streams of Pediatric Adams, and 5 were great, and one his just audio was just awful, and we tried to cure it, and we tried to cure it, and we tried to cure it, and we did in the end. But people get very demanding about the free content they're giving you. And most people are great. But how dare this free thing that I am watching that you're giving to me free on YouTube is not of the highest quality? You want to go, well, okay. I'm being a bit grumpy now. It's because I've got a cold. I shouldn't.
You are totally fine. So actually, we have a question. And since today is the anniversary, this is from Sander. How familiar are you with Operation Market Garden, and what are your thoughts on that part of World War II?
Well, that's my next week. Our first show on Tuesday is a Market Garden show. So I've been to Arnhem quite a few times. It's kind of a second area of interest for me. And so I've got 5 or 6 shows coming up next week about Market Garden. We've done Market Garden content in the past, so we did a few shows last year. I think I did some right in the first year, but this year my intention was to try and find a couple of different views of it, a different angle. So one of the experts coming on is a Swede who has written about it. So again, going back to what I was saying, it's all very well having a Brit coming on talking about Arnhem, and I do have a couple of Brits coming on talking about Market Garden. But the Swedish guy has done a couple of fantastic books about it, and sees it from a different point of view because he's Swedish. And so, yeah, the first show is Tuesday, and the last one I think is the Sunday. I think I have to change it because Jos Groen, a Dutch historian who wrote about the 502nds, an American unit, he's just had to go to the States for Pee Wee Martin's funeral, the 506 vet, who was a friend of mine. So now I've had to push his show back a few days because he's going to a funeral of a mutual friend. So that's fine. But yeah, so Market Garden is something I know about. I thought someone was going to ask who do I think made the biggest mistake there, because that's a massive, great rabbit hole. But we could do that. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So who did make the biggest mistake there?
Gavin, James Gavin, the 82nd, by focusing on the Grosbeak Heights and not going for the bridge was a bit of a mistake. Urquhart, as the commander of 1st Airborne, he definitely allowed himself to, when he went off and disappeared for 2 days, that was not a good move. I mean, quite a few people didn't have their best day there. And in fairness, the Germans had a pretty good week. They had a bit more luck than would perhaps normally be average to get, coming out of the campaign where they've been thoroughly beaten. So Market Garden is if you stick 5 or 6 military historians in a pub and kind of shout in Market Garden, that's it. That's the evening's conversation going, no, it was them. It was that first bridge. No, and it was air transport plan. It was and there's no definitive answer. In fact, over the course of my shows next week, there'll be 2 alternate views of why it went wrong. Seb Ritchie is going to give one view of how it went wrong, which is partly different to how Krista Bergstrom will say it went wrong. So even people who've studied and written about it a lot will disagree with each other, because that's ultimately what history is. History is opinions, and you put forward your case and you say this is my opinion, and the public will go yes, or they'll go no, and some will go, no, you've missed this bit here, and or you've admitted that this guy did this. But if there was
Yeah.
no conversation, there'd be no point writing. If we knew the definitive answers to everything, what would be the point of writing new books? What would be the point of having discussions?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think discussions are healthy. Where did that? Oh, it keeps saying we had a question. Oh, I guess it disappeared. During your whole career as doing tours, historians, WW2TV, everything you have done, what is one moment that you always look back on and you're just like, wow, that was just like an amazing moment. Like that was just mind blowing.
Oh, there's so many. They would usually involve veterans and moments of connection between veterans and the battlefields they were at. So, I mean, not that I'm obsessed by Band of Brothers, but there was a time in Bastogne when there was me and Reg Jans, the historian there, and we had Smokey Gordon's son, Scotty, Ben Kaplan, who played Smokey Gordon, and us. We were all standing in Smokey Gordon's foxhole in Bastogne at the same time. And those kind of little moments of synchronicity where things like that come together. There's other occasions in Normandy where I've been there with British and Canadian. I was in the Abbey d'Ardenne, which is inland from Juno Beach, with the nephew of one of the murder victims murdered by the 12th SS, and him talking about his uncle and how his great aunt, this veteran's mother, set a place at the table for him for 30 years after the war, assuming this young man would turn up one day. And of course, he'd been murdered by the SS in the garden. And so those kind of moments are the ones that stay in my brain. The connections between history and being part of those moments, being with veterans on the beaches they landed on, those kind of things. But also, in terms of my career, those days when you feel you've done a good job, those days when you feel you've managed to take someone's interest in the war and improve their understanding, help them find an emotional connection with it. Those moments, and for them, there's been hundreds. I've been lucky to do this as a job, and the same in World War II TV with not long ago, someone who watched a show I did about 30 assault units, so a British commando unit, did a comment. No, didn't send me an email, and it was one of those emails that I wasn't sure the tone of it. It was, could you put me in contact with the historian who was on the guest on that show? So I thought, is he saying, could you put me in contact with the historian who was on that show, or is he saying, could you put me in contact with this? I couldn't get the tone of it.
Yeah.
And so I gave the email address of the historian. It turned out the guy who'd watched the show was the son of the wartime commander of the unit, the first wartime commander, who had an album full of unpublished photos. So my guest then ended up getting contact with the son of someone he'd been spending years writing about that unit. So that was a great moment. I mean, I didn't really reap the reward of that. My guest reaped the reward of it, but to be part of the facilitator of that was really cool. And that's happened quite a lot with people. You said yourself, you with the Fourth Armored show, grandkids, family members of watching a show and then emailing or sending a comment saying, I now understand my family's experience better. They're rewarding moments as well.
That's awesome. Why do you think it's important for people to learn history and learn about World War II?
Because you learn about yourself and you learn about the future. I mean, the only rule about history is that we don't learn from our mistakes. The only constant from history is we keep repeating ourselves. We learn and we don't learn, and so I desperately don't get involved on my channel with talking about Ukraine and what have you, because I feel there'll be a time for speculation about and discussion about that after the conflict is over. But it is interesting that there are these connections with logistics and supply lines and tactics and things like that, and you can make these parallels with what was happening 78, 80 years ago. And I say, just understanding yourself, understanding your own. When people are having a crap day because that they don't really like their job, or they've got someone at work who's picking on them, or they've got trials and tribulations in their life, is that the World War II generation and those who went through those conflicts went through 6 years of shitty times, and not seeing each other and families being. I mean, COVID. I think COVID. If you had, when we all went through the pandemic and the lockdowns and things, and it was difficult for lots of people. I'm not in any way belittling people's mental illness at it, but if you've studied World War II, I mean, my own mother, when she was born in 1942, didn't really see my grandfather till he came back in 1945. So she went effectively 3 years without seeing her dad, and they had to begin a relationship because he was away, and understanding that kind of thing helps you, I think, understand your own problems and think, okay, well, what we're going through is still bad, but it's not maybe as bad as what they were going through, and you can understand that the camaraderie that comes out of war, the shared experiences. That's some of the positives of understanding history. Is that you can look back and see what can we learn about togetherness? What can we learn about coming together? As you said it yourself, all the nations that took part on June the 6th, so just 15 minutes away from where I'm living is the invasion beaches. And all those nations came together with a common cause. They came together from republics, from monarchies, from various types of democracies. Some were atheists, some were religious, some were right wing, some were left wing. They were speaking different languages, but they had this common goal of, there's a greater evil out here that needs to be removed. Let's come together. And I think, your country is split down the middle. My country that I live in, France, has got problems. Britain has got problems of one side of the argument, other side of the argument. And the messages of some of that togetherness of World War II are useful for going forward. Just put aside differences. And I'm preaching now. I shall get a banner, get a banner out and a megaphone. Join the WW2TV party for a brighter future of togetherness. But no, honestly, I'll do our next thing. I'll start the party, and you can be campaign manager. Okay, we'll do that.
That's like a plan. No, I think that's great, and I completely agree with you on that one. JD from the History Underground has a question. What can you say about your recent collaboration with Indy? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Indy Nidell, yeah. No, Nidell, yeah.
And the Time Ghost team.
Well, thank you very much, JD, for segueing in there. There's a professional YouTuber. No, I've been plugging away doing what I'm doing, and there've been little surges, doing some stuff with JD, and I'm very grateful that JD's become a good friend over the last year or so, has helped boost my channel. But I was asked so Time Ghost is the big company, and World War II Day by Day, Indy Nidell and Spartacus Olson, and yes, that's their real names. They started Great War Day by Day in 2014. So they did a daily post on Instagram and a weekly show on YouTube. And their Great War channel has 1.5 million subscribers, and their World War II channel has 750,000 subscribers or something. And they contacted me 3 or 4 months ago about coming to film in Normandy. They're doing a 24-hour D-Day special next June the 6th. And essentially, I'm the co-host. The three of us are standing in various places in Normandy, and in fact, I'm going to get more screen time on location than the two main hosts, which is really cool. And we got each other's humor. We had a great time, and Indy does exactly what I like doing. He puts all the contextual side in. So when we're talking about Normandy on screen, we're also talking about the Eastern Front and Bagration and the strategic bombing and what have you. So, yeah, so folks, next June, when you watch the World War II Day by Day Time Ghost 24-hour D-Day production, I'll be in about 3 or 4 hours of it. I'll be in each of the hours of the 24 hours doing my stuff here in Normandy. And there's going to be, they're putting a panel discussion up, I think it'll be in the next week or two, which I'm in, which is going to be a teaser. It's an 1.5 hour long teaser, which is sort of paradoxical, but I'm really hoping it's going to bring a big boost for my channel, because it just gets me out to another level there. So thanks for asking that question, JD. It was really amazing to share the screen with two incredible historians. I mean, and it's about the bringing together of national perspective, because the film crew. So there was a Pole. One was from Bosnia Herzegovina. Spartacus is Swedish, German, American, French. Indy is a Swedish national who was born in Texas, and then there was a Brazilian, another American lives in Poland. I forget how many more, and then Mag was involved a bit as a friend. So they're like 8 different countries coming together, all with different perspectives about the events. Spartacus, for example, does
Oh no, Paul. Oh, there we go. We're back.
his channel is about yeah, I thought my phone did something. His channel is about atrocities, so he deals with the Holocaust and that aspect a lot, and Indy does it. So yeah, 3 of us together, they'd set the camera up and say, so talking for 20 minutes, and an hour and a half later we'd finished. It was that kind of thing. So good.
Oh, that is amazing. That's going to be so exciting, that coming next June. that is going to be super great. Ah, so what is coming? So I know you said Market Garden next week stuff. What is coming up for your channel? What can people be expecting coming up?
More of the same, but yeah, Market Garden next week, and then I might just have to schedule a week of kind of catching up on the shows that had to be postponed and cancelled, so that people, to bring them back in. There was who was it? John Bruning had to cancel because he lives in Oregon and he had forest fires or bushfires near his house. He lost his power for a day, so that one was cancelled or postponed. So that'll come next. And then in middle of October, I've got some really good ones about the Germans at Dunkirk, Cape Esperance, and 80th anniversary. I've got a week about the 8th Air Force coming up. Then 2 weeks of El Alamein. And then as we go into towards the end of the year, I'm going to do 2 weeks of programming about the Sino-Japanese War, which I've never covered before, which technically is earlier than World War II, although it will go into World War II as well. And Richard Frank is coming on from that, who is just a legendary American historian. Tower of Skulls was his Sino-Japanese. And Rana Mitter, a great British historian. So that, and I've got some historians from both Japan and China coming on talking about that. Again, the idea of trying to bring not just British and American historians, but people who actually are from the countries that we're talking about. Then 2 weeks in January about, well, it's going to be kind of called Stalingrad as a teaser, but it'll actually be covering the Eastern Front 42 to 43, so some of the lesser known battles, this panel discussions as well. So that's all coming up, and then more of the same until I drop down dead. Basically, just keep on going until I run out. I mean, I'm not going to run out of subjects, but I mean, just keep on going until I get bored with it, which I don't think will be ever, because I love it.
Yeah, and that's amazing. You tell your love and passion for it. So what would you tell somebody who wanted to do something like you do, be a historian, do that type of stuff? What would you give a young lad or lady? What would you suggest them to do?
Read from different sources. That's, kind of focus, I would say, because World War II and history is so overwhelming. I mean, yourself, I mean, the number of subjects you could discuss any week, it's just endless. And it's like, how will I possibly be able to get enough knowledge to cover all this stuff? So it's overwhelming how much stuff there is. I was trying to work out on Twitter how many books have been written on World War II. And with a quick search of Amazon, I found there was at least 100,000 books still in print about World War II. So there's an insane amount of information out there. So when you come back with 2 new books for your shelf, and I got 4 in the post today, I'm still only at 0.0 whatever it is percentage of the books that have been written. So I kind of say, focus on kind of one thing. So if you're, focus on, start somewhere like Normandy or the Pacific Campaign or the Desert Campaign, and then, reminding people what I said earlier is then read from multiple sources. So don't 20 years ago when I started as a tour guide, there were lots of Americans who had like the Stephen Ambrose box set, and that's the only historian they'd read. And other than the fact Stephen Ambrose is a bit problematic as a historian anyway because of various reasons, but reading just one historian's books, it's one historian's point of view. I mean, so I would say, try and read a book by, if you're reading about the Eastern Front, read Polish historians, read Russian historians, read German historians, and then try and take on board all those different viewpoints, and then eventually kind of start formulating your own, really. And the other thing is engage with people. I think historians and history geeks have a bit of a reputation as being a bit nerdy, living in mum's, kind of, not getting much fresh air, and kind of just And I think there's a much more wider way of engaging people. Some of the festivals, I mean, I was at the We Have Ways Festival in July in England with James Holland and Al Murray, and I've done Chalk Valley History Festival. I've done things in Normandy. Is go out there, meet people, meet other people, and find that there are people you can go out and go to the pub, and you can have a beer or a wine, and you can talk with like-minded people. And that's when I go and do it. I'm going off on a tangent down a rabbit hole.
No, go ahead. No, you're right.
My fans will go, yeah, it means they can drink now. On my channel, when I say rabbit hole, it means everyone can have a drink. So that's great. Is that when I go and do research in Normandy, I don't go on my own. I either take Colin, my best mate, or Mag and Colin, Mag, my other half, and we go out there. I can spitball. We can go, do you reckon it was this ridge line they came across, or would it have been over there? They can't have come over that bridge because that bridge is exposed from that skyline over there, whatever it would be. And you can come up with much better discussions by talking about it. So some of the people watching who are my friends and fans of my show, is that meet other people in your town and go there and kind of like those book clubs, all agree you're going to read a book about Battle of Midway, but perhaps read different books. Mm-hmm. And go there and say, okay, so John Parson and Anthony Tully say this, but Craig Simon says this. What do we think? What do we think about this? And don't feel that only historians can talk about history. As I said at the beginning, I left school at 16 and have no qualifications for what I do at all, other than the fact of lots and lots of years of doing it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that other people now regard me as some kind of, I don't like the word expert, but, whatever they call me, a history buff, I don't know. That's great, but I have no qualifications. But if you do something long enough, you start having an opinion will listen to. And that my definition of a historian is not about qualifications. It's about, are people listening to what you say and taking what you say seriously? And if they are, then you're a historian. So if you're watching this and you're 16 years old and you have a blog and you're writing articles about World War II or whatever your interest is, whether it's Renaissance Britain or medieval, whatever, if people start listening to what you say and start responding to what you say and start sharing what you're saying, you are a historian. Now, whether you're a good historian or a bad historian, now that gets a little bit more complicated.
That's a different story.
You're a historian, because people are listening to you. I feel the academic world can be a little bit off-putting. Is how can I be a historian if I don't have a degree? How can I be if I'm not there? Well, anyone can be a historian. It's about you're a historian. JD's a historian. Chris is a historian. We're all historians in different levels. Some, JD teacher, so he's a proper historian. He's a real one. He gets paid for it. But share and discuss. That's my advice. Engage with people about your subject, and then you will learn more, and then they will respect you, and then it goes on from there.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love that. I love especially what you said about when you're reading about something, don't read one side of everything. Get more resources. Don't take everything from, one source. There's so much more than just that, because it is the opinion and conclusion of the author. So, I think that's very important. I've said that to my friends a few times and they just rolled their eyes at me. So that was pretty fun.
And we all have our favorites. We all end up with that author. We really like their reading style, and it can be a bit kind of, well, I'll just keep on reading him or her. And that's great. And there are authors, I love all their content, but also it's like, okay, but now I will just go and look at the other view and try and get something a bit different.
Mm-hmm. So I love asking this question to whether you're a collector or not, or anything or even just a subject. And I know your big thing is Normandy, but is there one subject item or something specific to World War II that you just have like a weird obsession with? Like for me, mine is the USS Indianapolis. I have no idea why I'm obsessed with it and the story and all of it, but I've had friends that are obsessed with jump boots and helmets, and one is canteens and that type of stuff. Is there something of yours that you just are weirdly obsessed with?
I do like the Denison smock, the British Airborne smock. I kind of have a thing about the Reconnaissance Corps at Arnhem is a particular interest of mine that I feel myself diving into again and again. I like little souvenirs from battlefields. I used to have a bigger collection of militaria, and I was a reenactor for many years, but I don't have that anymore. But I have a little cabinet of things. So I have like some sand from Iwo Jima, and I have sand from other battlefields. I have bullets I picked up at various places, and stones I picked up at various places. So I've got a stone at the top of Toccoa in Georgia and things like that. So those kind of things I quite like. But my obsessions kind of about things kind of move very quickly. It's like people say, "What's your favorite book?" It's the one I've just read is usually my favorite book. I have some classics that I love, but it's whatever I'm reading about right now is my favorite thing, and then that will move next week as I move on to something else. But yeah, it's and this gets back to the fact that World War II and my life are one and the same. It's like you know, I read the stream and then keep on reading about World War II or put a war film on. It's like I don't have a separation. Perhaps some might say I should have more. I mean, there's football on a Saturday afternoon. That's kind of a
it's like a balance.
But yeah, I mean, it's just something I enjoy, and so yeah, my World War II never leaves me, so I'm obsessed about it all, really. That's maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you know, I mean, it's like when people say, "Well, what else would you do?" I have nothing else. I have very basically no transferable skills now. I'm 53 years old. I can talk about World War II, and that's it, really. I can't see me going out into the wider world and starting on the bottom rung of real estate or whatever it would be. They'd go, "So what can you do?" I can talk about a Denison smoke and the different manufacturers. I can tell you, where Kesselring was in 1943, but okay, but do you know how to sell houses? I go, no, I have no.
Yeah.
No, you know, I'm a bit stuck with. Yeah, so the World War II will not be being talked about because it is central to everything. And I think we're in a particular era where I think we are now going to be busting more of those myths, as we've now, I mean, with the passing of Jim Martin last week. He was my last friend as a World War II veteran to pass away. I have no more friends. There's a few veterans I have met who maybe I could count as an acquaintance. They may recognize me when I sort of say, "Hello, how are you?" But actual friends, people that you would, have a bond with, my last World War II veteran has now passed. But mainly, the benefit for that is with the living participants gone, is we can now really get to grips with these battles and start saying, okay, so let's look at this afresh. Let's wipe the slate clean. Let's start building up from scratch about what we know about D-Day, what we know about Monte Cassino, what it would be. So I think it's an exciting era. It's a sad era to close the door on the World War II veterans. Exciting era of opportunity for renewed study. We won't necessarily have to think about offending someone that if we criticize their company command, or we say that on that day their unit didn't perform as well as they could have done it, that kind of thing, or better. You could argue, make a very good case that the best books about the American Civil War were written 150 years after it happened, not 80 years. So I think that there's an opportunity with the next generation to really start addressing things. And it's interesting, and I'm sorry about rambling on your show, but
no, you're totally fine.
People like John Buckley, who teaches war history at Wolverhampton, he's been a guest on my channel several times. When he was teaching people of our own, mine and John's age, people who are born in the 60s and 70s, they went to his classes with a preconceived idea of who Montgomery was and Patton was, and all because of war movies. But his younger students in their 20s don't necessarily come armed with that. When he presents battles to them, they don't go, "Oh, well, Patton was a so-and-so and Montgomery was," because they don't have that same bias. So the younger students maybe will turn everything we thought on its head, because they'll go, no, you've all been looking at Montgomery the wrong way, they'll say, for example, or we've all got MacArthur wrong, because you're looking at him through that lens of knowledge. And maybe, one of the big interesting things now is how many of these leaders are now being labeled by modern terms of things like Asperger's, autism. Montgomery was almost certainly on the spectrum somewhere. And that one wouldn't be something we would have said about Montgomery 50 years ago, because people didn't know what autism was. And so the modern understanding of human behavior will shed a light onto the egos of people like MacArthur. And Winston Churchill was a functioning depressive and an alcoholic, essentially. That's and the understanding those sorts of the people from a modern lens will be really interesting as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll wrap up with one question, then I'll let you go so you can get some rest and all that stuff. But Freddie Joe Farnsworth wants to know what your favorite World War II film is.
Well, as is Freddie Joe Farnsworth, who I've never met. I've met lots of his colleagues, so I've never met in person. I mean, obviously, Band of Brothers is an amazing TV show, and
He's
I
fishing.
love it. Yeah, I know, but I do, and it holds, you know, I've had that privilege to know some of them. I knew some of the veterans, I know many of the actors, but actually, I'm going to throw kind of a left. But my favorite war film is Talva Sota, Winter War, the Finnish war film.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a bit hard to get. That's one of my favorite films of all time. And I like Lawrence of Arabia, which is obviously First World War. Fantastic. But yeah, Talva Sota is always one of the ones I throw out there as a top war film. But that's always constantly changing. My favorite war film is Block High is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I like international films. I like there's one. I completely forgot the title of it now. An homme qui échappe. It's a Frenchman who's escaped. A man escaped is in English. It's about a Frenchman in prison in the war who escapes. It's like a slow burn, almost no dialogue of him escaping from a prison. That's an amazing one. But yeah, the Winter War. But a special nod to the exemplary work by Freddie Joe Farnsworth on many war films, because as he's watching. And we've never met, but we'll meet one day. So, yeah, incredible military knowledge he's brought to some amazing films.
That's awesome. Look at you go. Actually, one question, because there is somebody in the comments who asked this question. Do you like the story or know the story of the Bedford Boys? Like, do you guys know about it over in Britain?
Yeah. I mean, Alex Kershaw is one of my best mates. So I was having dinner with Alex 4 days ago. We discussed the Bedford Boys. Alex, I've known Alex for years. And so Bedford Boys is a book I have been suggesting to tour clients for 20 years. I reread it myself at least once every year. I met Roy Stevens, the surviving twin, a couple of times. I knew other people from John Barnes, who was a survivor from ACAM, it wasn't involved in the first wave. So Bedford Boys is an incredibly important book. The National D-Day Memorial in Bedford is incredibly important. And Alex Kershaw, who wrote it, is a really good mate. So yes, I do, is the answer to that one.
Yeah, all right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us and answering questions and just hanging out for a little bit. And especially since you're under the weather, I really appreciate you taking the time.
And I've been sitting there because I moved. I had the lighting all set up, and then my nose looks redder than Rudolph's in this room here. I should have, because I had it all set up in another room, and then the connection was so bad. And I've been sitting here looking at myself, going, "My God,
I haven't even noticed."
Well, it is, and I can't. I look like I'm lighting the way for Santa, but whatever. If that's the takeaway. He knew his stuff about World War II, but my God, his nose was red. But I have got a bit of a cold in my defense.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's great talking to you. And thanks for what you're doing, because Instagram is I don't do much on Instagram. Mag does my Instagram for me because I'm a Twitter guy. But what you're doing is you're reaching another demographic. You're reaching another group of people. So all of us are doing our different ways of communicating history, and there's room for it all in the different ways. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for the invitation.
Thanks so much, Paul. Paul, thank you again so much for being on. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us, asking questions, and joining this week's episode. And Paul, get some rest and feel better.
I will do. Thanks very much, then. I will see you next time. Bye then. Bye.
Bye.